If one or two groups unable to do so, please let me know. Keep a message to them. If they are unable to submit on time, ask them to send me an email requesting for 1 or 2 days extension of the extension of submission, and then without probably reducing marks, I will allow them to submit as an email. More importantly, request them not to, stay away without submitting. It's not good. They will be in trouble when it comes to final marks as well. So those who are unable to submit within today, send me a message. Right. With that, let's move to this new area called production planning. Kind of common topic we discuss in operations management. But for undergraduates like you all, that will have some important area that you don't know. Right? So the learning outcome set for this initially to identify the importance of production planning. When we discuss production planning, you will understand what it is. Then you will understand the importance of production planning for business. So we will also explain what are the different production planning related activities that happens normally. There's this new planning approach, we call it SNOP, Sales and Operations Planning Approach, to improve the planning decision making. We will identify that, and after that we will also identify the common production planning strategies and approaches used with some simple examples also. That is what we try to understand. Production planning. So far, different topics we discussed at operations management, they were about designing an operation system, how product should be designed, how processes should be designed in an efficient manner, technology selection, process selection part of it, layout planning, quality management steps, location planning. Most of them are design decisions. Now, in this topic, we try to understand how to utilize operations resources for the intended purpose. What is the intended purpose? For what operations system is designed? That is to produce products and thereby fulfill market requirements. For that, one important step that connects available resources and how to fulfill the market demand is called production planning or operations planning. Right. So this is an important area of decision making in operations. Right. An important area of decision making. By using information of various types, we try to identify the future demand for our products and thereby plan the production smoothly so that we will be able to meet the market demand on time. All such efforts together we consider as operations planning. So when we organize it as a sequential process or according to a hierarchy and arrange them as long-term planning, medium-term planning, and short-term planning, we can identify some of these activities. These planning steps, especially the long-term operations planning that we have already covered, like process planning. Accordingly, the capacity and knowledge will be determined. And then, of course, the strategic capacity plan. Those are long-term production planning that sets the production constraints, what we can actually produce. When it comes to medium-term production plan, medium-term, in business management, particularly in operations management, medium-term refers to 3 months to 6 months to 9 months or 12 months period. Medium term. Medium term refers to 3 to 6 months to 9 months to 12 months period. The short term, that is less than 3 months period. Immediate 3 months. So in the medium term production planning, there is this main activity called aggregate planning. based on the production capacities and other constraints. There is this main activity we do or factories do. We call it aggregate planning. In our discussion today, we are going to talk more about that. That leads to the other production planning related activities. In manufacturing, there is another one we call it production scheduling. The next level of production planning. And based on aggregate production plan and master production schedule, there is another planning step. We call it materials requirements planning, MRP. All are medium-term planning steps, production planning steps. That we try to understand. That leads to short-term planning like monthly, weekly, right? Production targets set for each product item. That is also important, but in our discussion today, our focus is on the aggregate plan. Planning related concepts, how to complete the steps, what factors to consider, what are the different strategies likewise. Coming to service industry, the way of production planning, in that case, service operations planning is a little different. There is not necessarily aggregate planning, but resource allocation of services is what we consider. So resource scheduling is taking place according to the capacity constraints, and then straight away they go for monthly, weekly workforce planning, customer scheduling, right? And accordingly they arrange and they plan the daily, monthly product operations related activity, service operations. Keep that aside for a while. But we are going to focus mostly on manufacturing industries and identify what aggregate planning and what other planning steps. This is what you see in slide number 4. According to the time horizon, intermediate range, intermediate term. Production planning activities are known as aggregate production planning. It involves specifying how to effectively use companies' operations resources, like their factories, machinery, and the workforce, to effectively meet the demand, projected demand for the products. Usually covering 3 to 12 months. I hope that is clear. It is known as aggregate, meaning total or combination of. Now, take a factory that produces shampoo, say for an example, or biscuits. Shampoo. Coming to shampoo, they may be producing different brands of shampoo, at least 2 or 3 different types. Take one shampoo type, shampoo brand, they may be producing different sizes. Sachet packets or small bottles, medium size and the large ones. So different sizes of different brands. Usually, production planning is done not at individual product level, but at aggregate level. That brand of shampoo, the total production required, aggregate. Not individual product items or sizes, no. Is that clear? So planning the production for total volume, total category is what we call aggregate production planning or category production planning. So that is clear. So this slide, slide number 3, sorry, fifth slide, shows you the planning process, the same thing that we have identified based on the long-term operations planning constraints. The medium-term or intermediate range production planning that includes aggregate production planning. Nowadays it is handled through sales and operations planning, SNOP. I will explain that to you. Production planning and budgeting. Accordingly, setting employment levels, inventory levels, subcontracting levels, and various other operations related planning. Plus, analyzing the planning options operating plans and calculating the costs and deciding what production plans are more cost effective and accordingly implemented. And as you see there, usually the intermediate term production planning decisions are taken by middle level operations managers, like the production manager, factory manager. Right? So middle level operations managers with the support of sales and operations planning team, SNOP team. I will explain that. So these are the ones who these are the ones who involve in decision making. How about the long-term plans? Who involves there? That's the top manager. Can you see here, even for medium-term production planning, top executives are also involved here. You can see it could be serious. That is the whiteboard option. So that how can I write here? Yeah, there is we have this option. Where is that? It's side. Side. I don't know that it's problem. Anyway, I go to a pen anyway, right? So now you see top executives are also involved here in a way like usually the medium term production planning are done or are taken by the middle level managers, but top executives have a control over the decisions. They come, take part in the planning activities, especially to approve the production plans. Accordingly, they finalize the production plans for the factories and all. That is how it happens. Then such plans are taken down to the month or quarterly level or monthly level or weekly level plans that we call short-term production plans. Usually it is the factory managers, operations managers, and the lower level operations managers like supervisors, foremen, team leaders and all, they further specify the production plan and involving scheduling. And then through techniques like job assignments, ordering, job scheduling, dispatching, deciding overtime, part-time help, and all the other production related daily, weekly decisions are made. Right. So in that way, based on the timeline, we can identify a different production planning activities. Our focus today is on the medium-term production planning. That's called aggregate production plan. Is that clear? I think so. So how can I? Yes, now I have a mail. Right. Are we ready? Right. So We try to understand how production planning decisions are made. Any quick questions? Seems all right. Now this slide shows you usually when deciding the quarterly production rates, 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months. Right. Hello. When making medium-term production plans, what factors to consider? What are the different conditions, factors? Hello, what are you doing? Huh? They wanted. කතා කරන්නේ. එම්තන ඉඳගෙන කතා කරන්නේ. නේද? මේ නැතිල කට්ටියක් තියෙනවා. ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ නෑ සයි සිග්නේචර් එක දාන්න ඕන ඒකත් පුළුවන්. I waste your time. So how production planning decisions are made, considering what factors. This slide, this illustration introduces you some of the factors. Some are external to the organization and some are internal to the firm. Usually in production planning, they have to consider the external factors, especially market and industry related factors. As you see here, some of them are mentioned. What are the different factors they have to consider? Especially this factor, that is the demand for the product. So market demand for your product, not only for one product, but for the category of products, should be accurately forecasted. So hope you remember we discussed a topic in our subject called demand forecasting. Somewhere in the middle or second or third or fourth topic. Right? So demand forecasting. So those are the techniques commonly used to accurately forecast the market demand. Accurately forecast the market demand. Such forecast data, demand forecasts, are one of the main inputs to the planning. Weekly or quarterly, monthly or quarterly. Most probably monthly or quarterly market demand will be used for that matter. Quarterly, monthly or quarterly market demand. So for an example, as a biscuit factory Munchie, when they think of how to utilize their factories to produce different types of biscuits and make sure their products are available in the market at the right time. At the beginning of the year, or probably in every 6 to 9 months time, they come together as different departments and one team, they forecast the market demand for the next 6 months, 9 months or 12 months. Based on that particular figure, demand forecast, plus other factors, they decide what are the quantities required. For each month, each quarter, what we are going to produce. Clear? Right. What are the other factors to consider? Not only the market demand, but also our capacity. In this case, this is external capacity, right? And then their production capacity should also be considered, plus external capacity. What they can get done from the outside. They have to also think of the economic conditions of the market that will also affect the production plan. Economic conditions like inflation, income levels of customers, maybe any other economic conditions like foreign exchange rates, employment levels, interest rates, or any other economic indicators, economic factors should also be considered. Because depending on the economic conditions, the demand for your product may vary. You may forecast higher product demand, but due to economic conditions, the required quantities may be different. For an example, now we experienced kind of economic downturn from 2001 to 2 to 3. So all the companies, they forecasted the demand well in advance, but at the same time they realized there can be certain adverse economic conditions. So they were ready for that. They did not produce unnecessarily. Actually, supply shortages were there. They could not import certain ingredients or materials from foreign suppliers. Interest rates were really high. More personal income levels, I mean more personal, we call it APIT, right? Personal income tax. Would all these factors affect the market demand? So inflation, personal income tax, right? And then foreign exchange shortages. And of course, all these things, ability to purchasing power may go down. So accordingly, production planning should be decided. So like plus raw material availability and the competitors' behaviors, like factors should be considered. Hope that is clear. Those are the main external factors to consider. But internally, there are some other factors like their current capacity, current workforce, the current inventory levels available, the nature of production activities, and many others. So subject to all these factors, decision makers should decide the appropriate production levels. I hope that is clear. So who make those decisions then? On behalf of the organization, who make the production planning decisions? There can be production planners, skilled and well-trained production planners involved in producing or designing the production quantities. And more often now, more than a person, there's a team working together to design production planning requirements. That is what I just want to introduce you here in slide number 7. There's a team involved here that is known as SNOP team. SNOP team. Have you heard of it? SNOP stands for Sales and Operations Planning Team. A team, a group of people representing different departments. At least 2 departments you can identify. What are the 2 departments should come together? Sales team and production team. So maybe representing each department, few maybe the heads, managers will come together for their appointments. Sales and production team. In addition to that, there can be other members also, like marketing team, marketing manager. And then from the production supply side, procurement manager of the supply manager. To provide the accurate inventory related data, inventory managers or warehouse managers can take part here. Right. And then representation from the top management will also be there, right, to give the top management inputs and keep the control over the decisions. So likewise, it's a team, and the people representing different departments come together. It's a formal team appointed by the top management, make decisions about production planning decisions. Hope you get it. Write it down somewhere. So what we mean by sales and operations plan team. It's a combination of individuals, team of people from different departments. Especially sales and operations, sales and production. Plus marketing. Depending on the marketing efforts, like the marketing team is planning for a new aggressive advertising campaign. When deciding the production plans, they have to consider it. To advertising, you try to increase the demand. So the production plan should be arranged accordingly. The marketing team planning to introduce a new promotional campaign. We need to expect higher demand. And accordingly, the production should be arranged. That marketing representation will be there. In addition to that, finance managers, especially to decide the cash flow requirements. And then, of course, to decide the supply side of it, procurement managers or supply managers. And then inventory management side, maybe warehouse managers or inventory managers could join. Fix the team, maybe 5 to 6 individuals come together, design. That is the latest approach. And as you can understand, when these different departments come together, their concerns, their constraints, and their inputs can be discussed together and put together and make the final decisions faster. As you see here, manufacturing firms often use SNOP teams to coordinate demand and production decisions. So this team is aimed at the coordination and integration of internal and external resources required for successful aggregate plan. Not only the plan, when they work together, they can easily communicate between the departments so that the agreed production quantities, production plans, and other details are communicated to all such parties involved. They together jointly design. So executing the plan is easier and more practical. They can easily execute the plan. Slide number 8 shows you to effectively use SNOP team. What are the initial conditions that businesses should fulfill? First of all, we need to identify a logical unit for measuring the sales or output. What is the logical unit? Is that individual product items or product categories? In most of the cases, they would go for product categories, aggregate level. In certain other instances, they might go for individual items, especially if they produce only 1 or 2 items that are of high demand. In such case, they will go for individual products. Otherwise, product categories are used. Say for example, a manufacturer like Colombo, to Singer. Unfortunately, most of them they do not produce products like televisions. Here, it's they import certain components of the ready-made products. Let's say Singer, they assemble refrigerators of various sizes, various capacities. I don't know exact capacity levels, but there are different sizes. Let's say 4 sizes. Right? Single door, small, medium, large, likewise. So all the products together we call it the categories. Individual products are right. So televisions could be television category or individual product levels like screen size based on that. So individual products, individual product levels. So that is one requirement. In addition to that, we need to have accurate forecasted demand for a reasonable period, maybe for 6 months, 9 months, at least 12 months. And then a method to determine the relevant cost. Because together with the production plan, we have to consider the production cost as well. I will introduce you the relevant cost a little later, but we need to have the cost details. And then, of course, a model that combines forecast and cost. So, accordingly, scheduling decisions can be made for the planning period. So, these are prerequisites. These are important in order to execute sales and operations planning. I hope that is simple and you can understand it. Coming to aggregate production planning, APP, based on the finalized production volumes, the sales and operations team may come up with figures that could be one input, right? And based on such inputs, factories will finalize the production quantities, considering market demand and other factors. So that step is known as aggregate production planning. So this is the simplest way we can describe it, what it is. So aggregate production planning is intermediate production planning step. Intermediate term production planning step that specifies how to effectively use companies' resources to meet future projected demand of their products, usually for the medium term, 3 to 12 months period. Is that clear? So every 5 months to 6 months to 9 months period, there is this team that come together and update their production plan. Say for an example, they set it for 6 months. Right? They don't wait till the 6 months are over. No. Sometimes they initially set it for 1 year, and every 6 months time, they extend it to the next 6 months. At least for 1 year, they have a kind of production plan. That is how it happens. Every 6 months, they come together and finalize and extend it for next 6 months. So that at least for 6 months time, we get production plans, intermediate plans. One might ask why can't factories operate without medium-term production plans for every 6 months, 9 months? Well, it's difficult, especially depending on the product. It could be biscuits, it could be ice cream, it could be garments, or it could be automobiles or tires. Right? Depending on the product they produce, it may require different materials, components that you have to order from outside suppliers. In order to smoothly start your production process, you have to make sure you order them in advance, and the suppliers should have adequate time to produce them and send you. So to supply the next 6 months products, you'll have to immediately start negotiating with your suppliers and getting things arranged, as we discussed in supply chain management last week. It takes time. That is one reason why aggregate production planning is important. The need for aggregate production planning, there are many reasons. So one main reason is to get the demand and supply in balance. so that without any failure, the company will be able to supply the product to the market without product shortages. And keep that balance over a period of time. Is that clear? If there are product shortages, that is due to a weakness in the aggregate production plan. They have not accurately planned the production sometimes. Accurately forecast, accurately plan the production. Can their production planning go wrong? Of course, yes. Due to various different factors. Factors like the market demand may vary. Compared to forecast, the market demand due to some sudden factors, sudden reasons. Right? Sometimes demand may be increased or demand may be decreased. So that your production plans may go wrong. You expect your suppliers to supply materials on time, but they failed. That you may not be able to start the production plan accordingly. So life pass. There can be different unavoidable circumstances, like natural disasters, or various other factors that may affect the production plan. So it's changing every time, but there should be a planning process. Some other reasons are also mentioned here. Quickly go through the other reasons and identify why aggregate production planning is required for factories. Aggregate production is done within the boundaries of long-term plans and decisions. Based on the resources you have, the factory sizes, layout, process styles you use, and according to the capacities you have, you do the aggregate production plan. So there you plan how to utilize the existing resources in the best possible manner. Balancing the projected demand and supply must occur at an aggregate level and also at detailed individual product level. So there should be this aggregate production planning first that leads to individual product level planning. Based on the aggregate plans, the short-term production planning decisions such as operation scheduling, work assignments, procurement decisions and other things will be decided. And for that purpose, aggregate planning is needed. So like this. So based on what we discussed so far, can you identify few specific points? Write this down. Considering a manufacturing organization of your choice. Considering a manufacturing firm of your choice. Considering a manufacturing firm of your choice. Describe 4 reasons. Describe 4 reasons that explains why production planning is important. So why production planning is required. Production planning, we identified what it is. So you have to identify why they are important. For one organization, you think. Whatever industry you can consider, mention the name of the organization, maybe 2 persons together. Right? Can select one organization, one industry, and decide for them why production planning is important. Two persons and work together. And in that particular industry, why production planning is important or critical? You can think of the same organization you considered for the assignment, first group assignment. You know more details about that or any other organization known to you. Meantime, you can also mark your attendance. There were 2 or 3 requests last time came to me and asked, but I couldn't attend to them. Yes, when you also had the same issue, I'm sorry, I couldn't attend to that. And meantime, you have to complete your activity as well. Discuss with your friends, right? Have you seen into the company? What is the company you're considering? Textile company like lace, garment factory or any other type? Garment factory. Catered to supply products to the global market. How about you, your team? Soldiers, it's all right. And then you also say apparel industry. Lanka, sorry, black spray, milk foods, milk foods, they producing and supplying packaged milk powder. Right? So then why the production planning is important? And your team? Okay, and you in the same group is that apparel industry, good. And how about you, group? Apparel industry, okay. You 2 or 3 ones? Two. Two. Okay, what is it? Shoes, shoe manufacturer. And how about you see? Cakes and bakery, confectionery items. Cakes and bakery items like tiara cakes or medium scale bakeries and all. Okay, they produce a variety of items. So you may think of 1 or 2 factories there and you separately, right? Garment products, apparel industry. Why the production planning is important to apparel industry? Apparel is one of the main industries we have. And you too discuss confectionery, production planning. They produce a variety of products. So identify a few points to emphasize the importance of production planning. It's medium-term production planning that specifies what are the required production quantities. Why they should plan. At least 4 or 5 points. That's enough. Online participants you can also think of an industry or one company of your choice and identify for them why intermediate term planning, production planning, aggregate planning is important. What benefits would be there when they manage it efficiently? Are we ready? Within 1 minute, let's start the discussion. Aggregate planning. Right, let's listen to some of your points. I hope we can start with the physical class. If certain points are missed, online participants can also join with us. We have selected mostly manufacturing industries. Since we have more groups that have studied apparel industry, common factories, let's begin with them. Together you can mention for an industry like apparel industry, maybe supplying to global apparel brands or to local apparel sector, like textile. So why for them? Aggregate planning is important. One reason. That is interesting. Very good. Clean point. Given the nature of that industry, apparel industry, in which basically the output, apparel products, garment items are different depending on the time, season, fashion, right? Different outputs are required. So the capacities are same. Factories, production lines, workforce, and other capacities are same. So then they'll have to well in advance identify what products are required in the market in order to make sure they can use the existing operations resources, factories, production lines, workforce and all, and meet the changing market demands, different designs for different seasons. The right product, right time, that you mentioned. The right design, the right time. To meet the market demand, you need to plan the production. Especially in that industry, the output is different. Now, say, Malibu, no Manchi, they are producing almost the same product. They do not change it time to time. So, in an industry like apparel, providing different outputs, different clients, different seasons, different designs, they have to plan it well in advance to meet the market demand with the right product. That's a very good answer. Otherwise, they fail to do so. Thank you. Any other group studying the apparel industry? Why? Some more reasons. You also studied apparel, right?
Timing ensures continuous use of pressures and fluid containing the foundation and IT times.
Important. That is another aspect of it. Through production planning, they can make sure that the resources they have could be factories, production lines, machinery, and more importantly, the workforce. Like operations resources are utilized in an optimal manner. Is that important? Otherwise, that would result in underutilization, waste of resources. So through aggregate planning, they can maximize or optimize the resource utilization. That is another valid point. Have you identified that? Optimize the resource utilization through production planning. Otherwise, there will be product wastage. Sorry, operational resource wastage. That is different from the previous point. And any other group, you can write it down. Online participants also can write it down. So these are applicable for basically apparel industry, but in some other way to other industries as well. You have also studied apparel, right? So any point? Of course, that is another important point to ensure smooth supply without any shortages. Ensure smooth supply to the market, we need production planning. So at least 6 months, 9 months in well in advance, they know the quantities required, and accordingly they can arrange the resources required and start production on time and smoothly supply to the market. And ensure product availability. Ensure product availability without shortages. Can we identify one more point from the apparel industry? Cost controlling. How through operations planning cost elements or cost related cost controlling. All right. Okay. Okay. That is really great. One of the main points. When they identify the production requirements well in advance through production planning, then they can plan efficiently how to meet the production quantities in the most efficient manner. That reduces the production cost, per unit production cost. through various different mechanisms, as he correctly pointed out. It could be through bulk purchase of materials, so that you can bargain for better rates, unit prices, bulk buying, or something called forward buying also. Have you heard of it? Something called forward buying. That means when the prices are low, you order for future quantities as well, future requirements as well, so that you can purchase the price, materials and components at the lowest price. You know, such components are required in next 2-3 months also. You can buy for the future, forward buy, and thereby there can be cost efficiency. In addition to that, through effective production planning, that's the next step that we are going to discuss. We can plan which planning approach minimizes the unit cost. When you identify well in advance. Otherwise, if you are to quickly, in shorter time period, if you are to supply, sometimes you can't look for cost efficiency. You'll have to go for immediate purchases, expensive methods. Right. That will increase the unit cost. So for controlling the cost, as he correctly pointed out, and produce at low cost, aggregate planning is useful. Agree? Very interesting. Thank you very much. Those are all very good points. Can we quickly move to 1 or 2 more industries here? We have confectionery, biscuits and cakes. In cakes and bakery items, what do you think? One advantage of advanced or aggregate production planning. Avoid ingredient wastage. Okay. So by planning the production in a way that minimizes ingredient wastage. True. One more. We can call it. Okay, by planning it well in advance, that would also consequently result in quality management. Can maintain the quality, ensure the quality, because all the quality ingredients can be purchased well in advance. Production processes can be production standards and all can be maintained in the same manner. So quality can be ensured. Quality will not be compromised. Right. Interesting. In biscuits industry, what are the points you have identified? Even the demand is fluctuating, it doesn't matter when you identify well in advance for a product like biscuits. The demand for biscuits, variety of biscuits, is that stable over a period of time, like within a year? No, within a year there will be different demand cycles, seasonal demand, low demand period, high demand periods. We call it demand fluctuations. Right? Through proper production planning, companies can still manage their supply irrespective of demand fluctuations. They have nicely identified it. Agree? Demand fluctuations can be easily absorbed. We have write it down. It's you can still meet the fluctuating market demand. Most that we plan. For bakery products, demand may be vary over a period of time. Demand fluctuates. One more point, please. We have ensure continuous production and continuous supply. They may be producing a variety of products, like different brands of biscuits. And within one product category, there can be different package sizes and high demanded items, low demanded items. Through proper production planning, you can ensure smooth supply. Supply without any speculative. So we have one more industry, new apparel. Beverage industry. Yes. Most of these fluctuating demand and other factors are relevant. smooth supply is relevant, cost efficiency is relevant. Anything new that we mentioned to? Good. Inventory. Of course, yes. One way to ensure the smooth supply, that is inventory management. But we know more the inventory, higher the inventory cost. Right? In one hand, without inventory, we can't smoothly supply, but we need to consider the volume of inventory levels, because higher the inventory, higher the cost. So that through proper production planning, you can still plan what inventory levels to be maintained to ensure smooth supply at lowest cost. So optimize cost investment, inventory investments. Thank you. I think you have covered a lot of points. Online participants, do you have some points in addition to those? No? So you'll be able to answer any such questions in case similar questions will be there in the exam paper. So you'll have to select one industry and explain at least few points. You will have to define what production planning is and then explain why that is important for that industry. Right. What you see here is the main objectives of aggregate production planning as described in operations management textbooks. Says in aggregate production planning, technically it determines few things. APP sets production rates by product groups or category level for the intermediate term. Right. So there are three things that we try to maximize here. So the main objective of aggregate production planning is to specify three things mostly. One is the optimal combination of the production rate. What should be the production rate we have to maintain in the factory? That minimizes the cost, and on the other side, meet the market demand. Second thing, what should be the workforce level to be maintained? And third thing, what inventory levels to be maintained, inventory on hand, to meet future demand smoothly at a minimum cost. That is a concern. The objective of ABB is very clear. Decide these or specify these three things to ensure smooth future markets, smoothly meeting the market demand at a minimum cost. These are the three things. So with an example, you should identify. So coming to each of the production rate, that means the volume of production would be each quarter of each month, weekly or daily. Workforce level, that means the size of the workforce to be maintained to meet the production rates. How many workers in the workforce? Inventory on hand, that means the amount of items to be made. So in ABB, we try to determine these three from period 1 to 10, 1 to 12. That minimizes the relevant costs of planning horizon. That minimizes the cost. What type of costs? Various different relevant costs for production planning. So I have introduce the main relevant costs for that. There are a few types, especially the production cost is relevant, right? Cost of production. That may vary with the production rates are different. So that includes fixed and variable cost in producing a given product within a given period of time. That includes direct and indirect labor cost, as well as overtime compensation and all. Whatever the relevant production cost should be considered. That is one aspect of it. So labor cost related, we call it costs associated with the changes in the production rate, labor costs that are of different types, like hiring, when you have to hire more workers and train them, that will be expenditure. Laying off, when they are no longer required, you will have to fire them or lay off with some compensation. That is how it happens in operations, production or factories. During certain months of the year, when the additional staff no longer useful, casual workers, temporary workers, they will be fired. To maintain optimal production rates, so that there will be labor related costs. Coming to inventory cost, that is inventory holding cost. As you know, higher the inventory holding cost. So we are considering those three main types of costs when deciding the production plans that you will understand with one or two examples. In addition to that, there will be other costs. If they are relevant, we have to consider one such cost type is called backlogging costs. Backlogging, you know of it. Backlogging, in case if you are unable to supply to the market, there can be some additional costs available. If you have to consider them also, we are going to do that. Costs such as loss of customer goodwill, lost sales opportunities, because you don't have products, you could not sell. Lost sales or loss of customer goodwill, some sales revenue losses due to backlogging. Right? If you have to consider them, usually we do not consider because they are difficult to financially measure. But if you have to consider, or if you are given the information in our calculations, you will have to consider. So mostly the first three types of costs are relevant for production plan. With an example, for different production planning approaches, especially there are two approaches, we will consider some of these costs and try to have some simple calculations to identify how production planning related decisions should be designed. That means how to decide these three things and determine the cost of the plan. That is after a small break. Is that all right? 5:10 no, maximum 5:50. You must be here. There were 2, 3 here. You 2 plus 1 more, right? Go and come quickly. Do you remember the date? Excellent. Who was that? No, you could mark that. That's yeah. What you submit kan value, kemudian email link kita pada kami juga harus share acknowledge keren tak sampai main di kerana tak sama kita ini itu boleh kita tahu boleh share untuk apa ini ada yang sudah more than 20 minutes. Nih, ada kerja kerana kawan ni, tapi ini kayaknya can you keep a message? Hello, you have a WhatsApp group. Can you keep a message to come quickly? But anyway,
Let's start. So,
get the calculation part for the second half that we can straight away complete it. Will they come? Have they already left the class? Let's start. Right. So let's start. So before the break, we identified now in the aggregate production planning. The main objective is to specify these three things. Come quickly. I've been waiting. Right. So specify these three things: production rates, workforce levels, and inventory on hand. That minimize the demand requirements while minimizing the cost. So here we identified what are these three things: production rate, workforce level, and inventory. And to determine the cost, we have to consider the relevant cost. We identified what are the relevant costs in production plan. Production rate related costs. In case of exam questions, that should be given. And then, of course, the costs associated with the production rate, workforce levels, and then inventory related costs. Those are the three main types of costs. Plus, backloading costs if they are relevant. So, in the summary, as you see in slide number 13, these are the inputs of aggregate planning. Inputs. So we need to have the demand forecast for a period of time, maybe a few months, 9 to 12 months period. And then, of course, details about available resources such as the current workforce size, inventory levels, production rates, and available capital or whatever. Other details related to the resources should have been there as another inputs to the planning process. And then, of course, what are the different planning approaches available? Alternative means of capacity and their associated costs should also be provided. So those are the main inputs to the production planning process. And considering that in the production plan, we specify these three things: production rate, workforce level, and inventory levels, and accordingly, the cost of the plan. So that is the output of production plan. So with some examples, we will identify what are the different approaches available for production planning and how to do the calculations and all, and accordingly specify the production decisions. So as you see in slide number 14, different industries, different companies, considering their requirements, their policies and all, they select some of these strategies for aggregate planning. Some companies may try to follow certain strategies and thereby design how inventories should be used to absorb the changes in demand. By using inventories, they can meet the market demand fluctuations. In some other industries, some firms, they might try to change the workforce size as another strategy. Usually, those different strategies cannot be applied together. Those are different strategies that would be applicable, that can be used in different industries differently. So third one, we call it use of part-time workers or use of part-timers or overtime work to absorb fluctuations in demand, or something called idle time. When the demand is high, you use overtime. When demand is low, you may reduce the part-timers, or maybe existing staff will be working shorter than the normal time. Maybe 8 hours is the normal time, but when the demand is low, they might be working for only 6 hours per day. Idle time. As a remedy, as a solution for absorbing the or adjusting to the market demand. So likewise, there are other strategies also. Some companies may consider subcontractors. And then any other demand management strategies such as the price changes can also be tried out. Is that clear? So these are different strategies, out of which I will show you at least few with 1 or 2 examples. So these are called agreed planning strategies. So coming to different capacity options available for the decision making, some companies might consider workforce related options. Workforce related options. So in that regard, there are few. One is hiring more full-time workers when they need to increase the capacity to meet higher market. Hiring full-time workers, permanent workers, or laying off permanent workers in case if the demand is declining. Additionally, as an alternative, they can hire part-time workers when they need to increase the capacity, or lay off the part-time workers when the demand is declining. So that is workforce related capacity option. And the existing workforce can be used for overtime. You know the meaning of overtime, OT. Normal time maybe 8 hours per day, but the same work staff will be used for another 3 additional hours overtime, the higher rate, to increase the capacity temporarily, and thereby meet the production targets. So like that is an option. Slack time, as I explained to you earlier, having shorter production operating times than normal. If the normal is 8 hours, they might run 6-hour production runs, especially when the demand is low. That's called slack time to face demand fluctuations. Coming to inventory related capacity options, the most common option is using the finished goods inventories and thereby release products to meet the market demand from the inventory. Back ordering demand is another inventory related option. Back ordering, as you may know, as we discussed under capacity planning, when you run short of capacity, you accept the order and transfer the production plan, transfer the items to a future time period. And you supply delay. You supply with a delay. It's also inventory related option. Right? You run short of inventory, you delay the supply. We call it the back order in the demand. Lost sales in the sense, if you don't have the capacity, the demand is high, you just consider that you are unable to supply. You run short of inventories, cannot supply, you consider it as lost sales. Stock outs that you are unable to supply. So those are inventory options in case if you are unable to supply. In addition to that, some factories may consider the fourth capacity option as well as a method. We call it subcontracting option. Right? Subcontracting, you know, as we discussed under capacity planning, right? It's a mechanism, it's a technique that you discuss with another supplier, another similar type manufacturing, and to use their factory, their workers, their machinery, and you subcontract your production quantity. So under your supervision, they produce it. And those are options that facilitate production planning issues. However, these different options have different additional costs. Our objective is to minimize the cost as well. So the production planners should try their level best to use most cost-effective capacity options while meeting the production targets. Yes. So let's take a few examples and try to get a simple idea as to how these different options are relevant in planning the production. Is that clear? And we quickly move to the next slide to introduce you what are the aggregate planning and what are the techniques available for aggregate planning. The first one, that is the most commonly used technique in factories even today. It's a kind of informal arrangement, informal techniques. We call it traditional informal techniques, or simply trial and error technique. Right? This is most commonly used in practice. As the name tells you, name implies trial and error. You or the decision makers like production planner, capacity planner in that case, using their previous production plans and resource availability and other details, they initially come up with a plan that is a trial version, initial plan that they try to improve. Right? And thereby try to optimize the production plan. That looks very simple, informal and casual, right? But still, even medium to large scale factories, they have that practice because that is more convenient, cost effective. And you can easily meet all the constraints when an experienced person or a team handles that production planning activity informally. Because other techniques looks more technical and more complicated. Right. So the technique that is most commonly used is called trial and error method. Even today, that works. But other techniques like some mathematical techniques, especially technique called linear programming, and various other mathematical techniques are also useful. Have you solved such equations like linear programming? They set the constraints and they try to maximize the profitability or minimize the cost, right, by solving the equations. So it's a mathematical approach. When you have the required data and the competent people who can develop these equations and solve them for the company, then they can identify the production volumes and other things that maximize the profitability or that minimizes the production costs at all. So that is the second technique that is commonly used. In addition to these two, there is this third option that has become more popular now. We call it simulation techniques. Probably you may have heard of it. Those are basically software solutions or maybe computer apps, packages, where you have all the databases connected to the simulation, or you will have to feed them, right, to the system, to the app, right, and then set all the constraints also in the app and ask the app to generate production plans. Like with any other information system, these simulations would generate more appropriate production plans for the decision makers. The special feature here in this simulation is that they can change the conditions, scenario. They can select the scenarios and all. What if the sales prices increases up to this level? So in that scenario, how should the production plan be arranged? In case inventory related constraints are introduced, in that scenario, how should the production plan be changed? In case if the competitors introduce more aggressive advertising and thereby certain percentage of your demand is attracted by the competitors, how you should adjust your production plan. So likewise, for different scenarios, you can easily adjust your production plan with such techniques. We call it simulation techniques. To be a simple Excel sheet with all the templates. So within few clicks, you can generate the production plan plus the cost details relevant is here. But initial work is huge. You will have set the template, feed data and everything. This looks more convenient, more appropriate, but still most of the organizations are not ready to use it. In years to come, that would be more popular. There are many companies now, they have upgraded their production planning techniques into simulation-based planning. Clear? So those are the, in our class, we just try to identify the first technique and trial and error just to get an idea, but be aware that there are advanced techniques like this also. We'll come to know when you start working. Right. Is that clear? What did we discuss? Certain other information related to production plan, capacity options, then production planning techniques and all. Any quick questions? Yeah. If you don't have any questions, let's move to the last part of it, the topic. Right. So coming to production planning related options available, we call it different strategies available for meeting demand, right? And accordingly prepare the production planning. There are these two main demand planning or meeting demand strategies. The strategies for meeting the demand that we have already identified under capacity planning. So there are two focus strategies. One is called level strategy, and the other one is called phase strategy. Do you remember? We identified them under capacity planning. Level strategy means the factory decides to maintain constant production rate. Whereas chase strategy refers to an approach that they change the production according to the market demand changes. So those are the two approaches. What are those two? Level strategy with a constant production rate and chase strategy with changing production rates, changing production rates to match the market demand. I will give you more detail. In addition to that, there can be mixed strategies also. That is a way to combine few strategies like stable workflows plus variable work hours, and accordingly decide production plan. So which strategies to use in the company, it depends on the various such factors, especially the cost factors. But not only cost, factors like company policy would also play a role here. As a policy, company may be ready to use inventory for level production because they don't want to change the production rate. They want to maintain constant rate as a policy. Some companies may be strict on inventory management, so they don't want to maintain unnecessarily high level of inventory, so that they may be ready to hire people and fire people to match the market demand without maintaining unnecessary inventories. So likewise. So it depends on cost plus other company policies and many other factors. I hope that is clear. Keep in understand there are two main strategies for this purpose. What are those? Level strategy and chase strategy. Let's quickly identify them. So level strategy, as we have already studied previously, refers to maintaining constant rate, steady rate of regular production time. In case of there are some fluctuations in demand, that is absorbed, that is met using inventories. That is how it happens. By using inventories or back ordering the demand, they try to manage the demand fluctuations. And in certain situations, they are ready to consider lost sales as well. Required, they might use other options like overtime or subcontracting. But the main option is maintaining steady production. If a company follows that strategy, the main type of cost applicable in addition to the production cost is inventory related costs. Because they maintain inventories in that regard. I will explain it. Inventory related costs, and if back ordering is considered, such costs are also applicable. But any costs related to workforce level changes like hiring, firing, training, right? So they're not relevant in case if they're following level study. Overtime and subcontracting costs are also rare or occasional and low. I will take you through one example to get an idea. That type of strategy is what we call level capacity. So as you see it in this illustration, demand that may fluctuate over a period of time. If the company maintains a level production, that means the production rate is constant, that you see in dotted lines. For a period of time, that is for 9 months to 12 months, they maintain the constant production rate. Any differences between production rate and the demand, that is met through the inventory. Now, say for example, during the initial few months, production rate is at this level, demand is low. They produce high level, demand is low. Then what happens? You gather all the inventories. During the second quarter also, production rate at lower level, but the demand is high. That's the solution. While continuing at the same production rate, they can use the inventories accumulated during the first few months, cater the demand that is high. So like us, using inventories, they try to absorb the demand fluctuations in level production studies. I hope that is clear. We can compare this with the chase demand when we explain that. Let's take one quick example to understand this and consider how to solve it. When calculating the inventory, some information like this would be useful. So as you see in slide number 20, to decide the ending inventory for the period, in ending inventory, EI, at the end of the period, you get the starting period for the ending inventories at the beginning of the period, and then the production rate minus demand rate during that period, so that you get the ending inventory. Usually it could be a positive value or a negative value. Positive in the sense you have ending inventory that is greater than 0. Less than 0 means you have a minus value. That means your ending inventory is a minus value. That refers to something called back orders. You are unable to supply. Demand is high, no ending inventory. So accordingly, we have to do the calculations, costing calculations, and adjust. Usually, ending inventory, right? So the inventory cost is calculated based on the average inventory. That is the beginning inventory plus ending inventory divided by 2. So average inventory is calculated. Usually, when there are back orders, that means ending inventory is a minus value. It is considered as 0, not the minus value. And then calculate the average inventory and then calculate the inventory cost. In case of back ordering, certain cost details should be given. In case of back orders, what is the treatment for that? What is the cost of one bag order? Like this. So we have to consider that accordingly when we calculate the cost of the production plan. With an example, you will understand. Right. Before coming to a chase demand, I'll take one example like this one. That's a very simple example. This is just to identify how the production planning is done in the most simplest context. Assume that you are provided such information. You will be given the sales forecast for the next 1 year. For each quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4, the sales forecasts. For the first quarter, 8,000. Second quarter, 50,000. So likewise. And we are provided such cost details as well. The hiring cost per worker, $100. Hiring cost per worker, $500. So likewise. And then inventory carrying cost is given as $0.5 per pound per quarter. Per unit per quarter. With the carrying cost. Regular production cost per unit per pound, right? $2. Some other information like beginning workforce 100 workers, production per employee 1,000 pounds per quarter. So likewise, there can be different production related and production cost related information. And you will be asked to prepare a production plan. That means 3 things. What could be the production rate, workforce size, and the inventory levels, and the cost of the plan. In case of the following level strategy, we have to identify what are the costs relevant and how the production plan would look like. Shall we quickly do that? For level production strategy. If they follow level strategy, how the production plan would look like. And for that, we might use a template like this as shown in slide number 25. I hope you are ready to understand it quickly. And first of all, what are the quarter? What is the demand? That is sales forecast. And then production plan. And for each quarter, we have to identify the inventory levels as well. And then calculate the cost of the production plan strategy according to the level strategy. I hope you get the point. But in level strategy, what was the unique point? What is the key point? The production rate is constant throughout the year. Constant. Then we have to identify what is the constant production rate that is appropriate for the business to meet the market demand. What is the constant production? That we simply calculate by adding the total demand and divided by number of periods we consider. Is that clear? There are 4 quarters that we consider. So we try to identify average per quarter demand and consider that as the constant production rate. So we add all 4 together and divided by 4, that resulted in 100,000 pounds per quarter. I hope that is clear how we calculated the average production rate. Add all the demands together, divided by number of periods, in this case 4 quarters. So we get per quarter average demand. What does that mean? That means every quarter we have to maintain the same production rate. What is the size? 100,000 units. Clear? So considering that, we can finalize the production plan like this. So each quarter, right, despite the sales volume, sales forecast, they maintain the same production rate. and thereby meet the annual demand. For each quarter, let's say in our first quarter, 80,000 required, but still they produced 100,000. At the end of the quarter one, what is the inventory remaining? Produce 100, sold only 80. There will be remaining 20,000 items at the end of quarter one. Coming to quarter two, quarter requirement is 50,000, but still even during the same quarter, another 100,000 will be produced. 100,000. That at the end of the second period, second quarter, what will be the inventory level? Last quarter ending inventory plus the production minus sales. That at the end of the second quarter, we will have 70,000 units in the inventory. Can you understand it? Can you understand it? That is how you have to simply, and this is a very simple example, but this is how it would look like when it comes to level strategy. Constant production rate. Shall we move to the third quarter? Third quarter, what is the demand requirement? Sales forecast 120,000. During that period, only 100,000 items will be produced. So the remaining 20, you'll have to supply through the inventory. It could be LIFO method, it could be FIFO method, whatever, inventory management method, right? So at the end of the period 3, there will be a remaining 50,000. I hope you are there, you can understand it. Coming to fourth quarter, for which the demand forecast is 150,000, but the production rate is constant, that is 100,000. So the remaining 50,000 can be supplied through the inventory. So at the end of the period, there will be zero inventory. Is that clear? If they are to maintain level production. Now we have to calculate the cost of the level production plans. And for that, we consider the information given here and identify only the relevant cost for that plan. We maintain constant rate. So we have to identify what are the costs relevant here. Is hiring cost applicable? No, we do not hire people here. Maintain the constant. Is firing applicable? No. So we don't have to, that is not a relevant cost for that plan. How about the third one? Inventory carrying cost. Is that relevant for this plan? Yes, because in level production, we have to maintain inventories. So we have to consider that. So it says $0.5 per unit per quarter. So we have to consider that. Keep in mind. So we have to add all the inventories together, right? That is 140,000 units into inventory carrying cost, so that inventory cost can be calculated. In addition to that, regular production cost per unit per pound. Is that relevant for that plan? Of course, yes. So we consider that one also. $2 into total production, that is 400,000. So those are the two costs applicable. So the total cost of the level production plan would come as 870,000. Is that clear? Combination of costs. Because other two costs are not applicable. Production per employee, that is not relevant here. And beginning workforce, that is not relevant here. So we have to consider the demand forecast and other details given, especially the costs, and select applicable or relevant costs and prepare the production plan and calculate the cost. A simple example we have selected here. You may see similar type of questions in exam papers. Little more complicated questions in exam questions. What we discussed? We discussed about level production planning. Any quick questions? Those who are connected online, do you have any questions about these calculations? Spend a little time. Do the calculations one more time. Probably you can easily understand for the gray areas by yourself. Shall we move to the second strategy then? Since we are also of time. So the second strategy is called the chase demand strategy. Chase demand. Compared to the earlier approach, in chase demand, what happens is like this, right? In chase demand, as shown in slide number 23, as the demand fluctuates over a period of time, chase demand strategy recommends change in the production rate also. Change in the production rate, chase in the demand. That means aligning with the demand. When demand goes down, production rate reduces. When demand increases, production rate increases. How? By reducing and by adjusting the workforce capacity. So as you see it here, production output varied to match the demand for every period by changing the workforce size. And in certain situations, occasionally, using overtime and part-time labor and even subcontracting, but that is not compulsory. If they have used such techniques, they have to consider the relevant costs as well. So usually in this strategy, is inventory cost applicable? Well, no. Why? They do not maintain inventories here. Instead, they adjust the capacity. Is backordering cost applicable? No, they do not backorder. They try to meet the exact demand within the same period. What is the main cost category applicable for this strategy? That is hiring, training, and firing costs. They are the primary costs, relevant costs for this strategy. Because to adjust the production rate, what they have to do is change the workforce. So we have to identify how many workers required for that period. So usually, referring to an equation like this, we can identify how many workers required for that period. So for that, at the beginning of the period, T minus 1. Right? What is the size of workforce? Plus, how many workers hired during the period minus how many workers fired during the period. So we can calculate how many workers required for the period. So like this. With an example, with the same example, let's try to identify how this production plan works and accordingly how to calculate the cost. Let's quickly identify. For the same example, demand forecast, so sales forecast is given, cost details are given. Assuming that they are selecting the chase demand strategy, how the production plan would look like. That means production rate, workforce size, and inventory. We selected a simple example. So let's quickly move to slide number 27. A template like this is required to decide the to identify the level production plan. Sorry, chase production plan. So quarter, which quarter, and then what is the sales forecast for the quarter, and accordingly what is the production plan. This is one piece of information we are going to calculate. And to calculate the cost details, we need to identify how many workers required for each quarter, whether to hire or fire, and accordingly we can calculate the cost of the production plan. Can you quickly move to the answer? Right. Coming to slide number 28, you get the answer. Chase demand. So for each quarter, you follow the same demand and production rate. Chasing the demand. So quarter one, what is the sales forecast? 80,000. What is the production rate? Same as demand. That is 80,000. Now we have to identify how many workers required. Produce 80,000 during the first quarter. How do we identify that? Now go back and see what information provided. Is there any clue here? Is there any specific data information required here? Somewhere down the line, you identify something called production per employee per quarter. What does that mean actually? Per quarter, per employee production. That is labor productivity. Right. So one worker can produce only 1,000 items per quarter. So to produce 80,000 units within the first quarter, how many workers required then? 80,000 divided by 1,000, we require 80 workers. Is that clear? Using the labor productivity information details, we calculated it. I hope that is clear. So to make sure that we can produce 80,000, we need 80 workers. Now we have to decide whether to hire or fire. And for that, what we need to know what is the starting workforce size at the beginning of the period. See in the information whether some useful information is given there. So it says here beginning workforce. At the beginning of quarter one, 100 workers. Then we can identify during the quarter one, we need only 80. Whether to hire? No, needed to hire. We have 100. Whether to fire? Yes. How many? 20 should be removed. Because we have to adjust the production rate. For the second part, that is 50,000 units required. What is the production plan? Exact 50,000. How many workers required for second quarter? 50. At the beginning of quarter two, how many workers we had? 80 we had. But for second quarter, only 50 needed. So whether hire or fire? Fire 30 more. Fire 30. Moving to quarter three, sales forecast 120,000. Production plan, exactly the same. How many workers required? To produce 120,000, we need 120 workers for quarter three. At the beginning of the quarter, how many workers we have? Only 50. We need 120. So we need to hire 70 more. 70. Now we have 120 at the end of the quarter three. Moving to quarter four, we need 150,000 units. So the production plan is to produce that quantity. How many workers required? 150. At the beginning, we have 120. So we should hire 30 more. Isn't so? So that is the production plan. And we basically calculate the cost of chase demand strategy. So in addition to the regular production cost, what are the other costs applicable for this plan? No inventory costs, but workforce related costs like hiring and firing. Get such details from there. Hiring cost per worker $100, firing cost $500, per worker. So related to the production plan, during the year we need to hire a total of 100 workers. So 100 into $100 plus total of 50 workers should be fired. So 50 into $500. So the total cost of the production plan, purchase demand, would come as 35,000. When you compare it with level production, for which the total cost is 870,000. Out of these two strategies, which would be the lowest cost, most appropriate production plan, that is, they are 835 and they are 870. So we would recommend them to follow the chase demand strategy because the total cost of the production plan is lower. If they make the decision based on only cost. There can be other factors like company policy and other details. So they can consider them, but based on cost, this is what we recommend because this is the lowest cost. We took a very simple example to get an idea, but real life questions or maybe even exam questions could be little complicated than this. Probably as you see in the next page, right? Next slide, there is one example here. You may do it at home, right? If you are provided such details and additional cost details, you need to try to prepare production plans for different strategies like level production and chase demand, and calculate the cost of the plan as well and recommend which strategy would be more appropriate. So we took very simple examples. You might see something similar in the exam questions as well. So at least be ready to handle some simple calculation. What did you discuss after the break? We identified two main production planning strategies. What are the names? Level production and chase demand strategies. Plan the production, and accordingly the costs, relevant costs are different for each plan. Finally, we identified if such information is provided, how to prepare production plans and calculate costs and make final recommendations. With that, let's conclude this topic. Let's see now for the time. What would be the last topic? Would that be inventory management, materials requirements planning, lean management? I know the reason why inventory management. You have studied inventory management for some other subjects, so that you are, you can easily inventory management. Inventory management is an essential or very important topic in operations management, though that is very simple at degree level. So let's go for that then. Hope to meet you after next week to have inventory management topic. And that will be the last topic. Thank you very much. Take good care of yourself.